Well, thank you for being here. This is a memorable occasion. It's not often that you have someone to graduate right in front of you. It's a personal occasion, very meaningful to me and my family. Something that Kirby thought about deeply and wanted to share with all of his friends. There are two things that I wanted to say before I turn it over. One is that only sometimes do people get rewarded for exceptional behavior. And the second is,
turn it up, Kirby,
that some people are not inhibited by knowledge. This gentleman to my left is not inhibited by knowledge. He marches forward with knowledge. And one day, years ago, for weeks and weeks and months, Curbs and I shared stories that were remarkable stories that are worthy of a book that he promised that he would help me write one day. And the featured person in the book, if you ever read it and hear about it, his name is Holy Schmoly. And it was so much fun. So as a person who's enjoyed him very much, and to parents who have loved him so much, what an honor for me to introduce Mr. or is it Dr. Kirby Kirsch.
Good evening. First and foremost, I'd like to personally thank everyone in attendance for being here today. I know that there are countless other things you could have done with your Sunday night, and I truly appreciate your willingness to be here and spend it with me. As I sat at my desk yesterday, I had a hard time tackling the question of what should a graduation speech include. Tradition has it that a graduation speech typically contains life advice, words of wisdom, lessons learned, ideas on how to be successful, insights on how to be happy, and what truly matters in life. No pressure, right? It seems indeed that it all boils down to the timeless question that each of us has likely asked ourselves a time or two. How can I be happy and successful? After all, don't we all want to know this? Unless your middle name is Zen Master, you too are probably still searching for the answers. And although I can't guarantee that I have them for you, I'd like to take this special opportunity to share something that I've learned about happiness, success, and life in general. The thing I'd like to talk to you about is expectations. Not meeting expectations, high expectations, low expectations, or anything in between. Expectations can trip us up. Now, there are three main types of expectations that we encounter on a daily basis. What the world expects of us, what we expect of the world, and most importantly, what we expect of ourselves. What the world expects of us is what I refer to as social normality. It's the set of unwritten rules that govern which behaviors are considered to be acceptable in our society. People who do not follow these expectations may be shunned or suffer some kind of consequence. And to make matters worse, these expectations are constantly changing according to the environment or situation that we find ourselves in. For instance, women were once expected to show up for work in nothing short of shoulder pads and calf-grazing skirt suits, because apparently hem length is directly proportional to professionalism, right? There was a time when family dinners were all about bonding and communication. The most common dinner table conversation starter went a little something like this. So, how was everyone's day? After dinner, the kids clean the table and wash the dishes once they thank their parents for the wonderful meal. At dinner parties, guests would compliment the chef and host on their lovely serving skills. Now, to pay homage to the chef and host for the beautiful meal, food must be photographed and immortalized via Instagram. Hashtags like #bestmealever and @mentioning the chef are like a living, breathing thank you card. Now, my point here isn't to underline the declining morality of society, nor is it to call attention to an increase of self-obsessed narcissism. No, that's a speech for another day. My point is that what the world expects of you should never be thought of as a long-term obligation, because what the world expects of you right now is almost certainly not what the world will expect of you in 30 years. Consequently, these types of expectations should be taken with a grain of salt and should have the least bearing on your happiness and potential to be successful. Don't like what the world expects of you right now? Just wait a little while. It'll change. Trust me. What we expect of the world or of other people is a bit different because it's something we can actually control. Perhaps you expected there to be a functional hoverboard by now, cars that can fly, or world peace. Maybe you took a different approach and expected the world to end in the year 2000, wages and job growth to stagnate, and your relationships to fall apart one by one. Regardless of which approach you take, we hold on to what we expect, even if it's not what we want, because maybe going out on that limb of change is too scary. Staying the same feels safe. The unknown, not so much. Expecting something better can sometimes seem not worth the effort because the idea of disappointment can feel tragic. This is where faith comes in, and if yours has already eroded away because of past disappointments, then trusting in what you can't see may be an option that's long gone. Olivia Goldsmith once said, quote, "The secret to true happiness is a combination of low expectations and insensitivity," end quote. For what you don't expect, you can never be disappointed by, and what you don't care about can never hurt you. Now, this isn't to say that you should care about nothing and love no one, for if that were the case, what would even be the point of living? No, what it really means is that you should be very careful with what you invest yourself in. Heartbreak is inevitable, as loss is just another part of life, but investing yourself so heavily in everything you do that when something doesn't go your way, it feels like the end of the world, is the quickest way to stress yourself out and feel dissatisfied with life. I have learned to have no or low expectations on things that are out of my control. That way, I'm usually pleasantly surprised. It's not easy, but eventually you come to the realization that you cannot hold the world to the same lofty standards you hold yourself to. For if everyone was great, there would be no such thing as greatness, because greatness only serves as a distinction between what is expected and what is beyond all expectations. Therefore, never blame people for disappointing you. Blame yourself for expecting too much of them. The most important of all expectations are the ones we set for ourselves, and it's paramount that we keep them reasonable, not minimal. I want to talk about emotions for a moment, because it's emotions of all kinds that exist to send us a message. Processing those emotions means getting the right message and acting appropriately on it. If you're feeling disappointed in yourself, not just once in a while, or on a particularly rough day, but routinely, it's well worth your time to examine why you're feeling that way. Most often, when you feel that vague sense of dissatisfaction with your efforts, the root cause is that you're holding expectations of yourself that you're not meeting. Those expectations can be about any aspect of life: work, your business, your craft, family, faith, the home environment, or some combination of any of these areas. And surprisingly, you may not even know that you hold these expectations of yourself in the first place. So if this sounds familiar to you, I have a different idea. It's a healthy and effective technique used to increase the likelihood of creating personal success in our lives. Just about every obstacle we encounter can be overcome by devising a plan of action which can ultimately lead to an internal satisfaction. That is, if we don't assign expectations to the outcome or the journey leading us there. What I'm talking about is goal setting. When we have expectations instead of goals, we set ourselves up for disappointment, defeat, and discouragement. Generally speaking, when we set our focus on expectations, we are not truly in control of our journey and leave very little room for self-empowerment. On the other hand, goal setting gives us the opportunity to look within ourselves to discover where we need to make improvements and execute a plan in order to obtain what it is we desire. Goal setting does not require perfection or even a direct route, but rather a general outline or path we can take to reach our objectives. Goal setting provides a vast array of options for rerouting and even mistakes along the way, whereas setting expectations tends to be an unforgiving, rigid mindset that allows very little room for understanding and compassion as we put unnecessary pressure on ourselves and others to live up to our idea of perfection. Setting ourselves up for success can be as simple as knowing that we have a plan and that we will do our best to reach our goals. The idea is to be both motivated but also realistic about the plan we make. If we rely specifically on expectations, we are robbing ourselves of the opportunity to be in control of our own well-being and the invaluable lessons we learn along the way. I'll admit, it's a balancing act, trying to ensure that you always expect yourself to live up to your potential while at the same time being reasonable with your goals so you aren't routinely disappointed in yourself. But if you keep your goals specific, measurable, achievable, and reasonable, you'll be well on your way. There is really only one thing to understand about expectations. They are all made from the same stuff: thoughts. Our expectations for ourselves and others' expectations for us are only as real and as powerful as we make them out to be. We put energy into them or we don't. We pay attention to them or we ignore them. We see them for what they are or we don't. With understanding, we see them for what they are more quickly. The only thing that keeps us stuck is the misunderstanding that we have no other options. When we realize that we have free will to recognize, consider, and let go of any expectations that are not helpful, we see the unlimited potential that is always available to us. So, as you leave here today and enter what is sometimes referred to as the real world, keep your expectations low and your goals reasonable, and may God bless you all. Thank you.
Kirby. Yeah, perfect. That was awesome.